ran in the night and stayed the night rather because I wanted to get the conversation in with you guys and just try to get people to really appreciate that this is not a game anymore. This is not a joke anymore. It's not a maybe. It's not an if. It's not, what if. It's really, truly done. It's a done deal. Obviously, this extinction happened immediately. I did find one single beach up in Poacher's Island full of cockles, and they're shellfish. They're like a clam. And that was, there was nothing else there with them. Now, there was no mussels with them, no little necks or manila clams, no razorback clams with them, no oysters or no gooey duck shells there. There was no other shells there, just the cockle shells itself. And outside of that, that was the only experience I had out of the whole coastline since last year, really, of life on the coastline, right? And so the snow is gone, the life is gone, the insects are gone, the birds are gone, the big feeder fish that's all that's left, and they're feeding on each other. Now they're cannibalizing each other.
Are they?
And that's what's literally going on now. Everything out there, the only thing that can survive out there is cannibalizing each other. I had, and I know Richard, Professor, I should call him, wants to have part of this too. Yeah, for sure. But I was talking, just before I forget, and the last part of it was that I was talking to a guide up in Prince Rupert, and he spotted me, and he came up and he talked to me. He had a fleet of boats, and he's following Fukushima, and he asked me some really pertinent questions about it, and you can see him, right? He understood, but he didn't understand, and so his questions were really straightforward, like, is it still ongoing? Because he still couldn't.
He didn't know, and he's a commercial fisherman. Wow.
He couldn't figure out whether the reactors were still hemorrhaging into the ocean because he couldn't find a reliable source that would tell him that.
No.
That's the
You'd have
problem,
to know
right?
the website. You'd have to go to Rense.com or something.
Right. Yeah.
Because the mainstream media is hiding it all, right?
I did suggest that, by the way. And the fact is that that's a bit of a problem, isn't it? Because I hear that a lot where people don't understand it.
Right.
I know where you're too, Richard, that, when people compare radiation to bananas, potato chips, and walking in the sunshine and getting on an airplane, right? And then they say, okay, well, we're allowed to get 400 millisieverts a year, blah, 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 natural radiation, but then, so you're getting the atomosity equivalent doses in such a short time. Well, that's not actually true because they're two different radiations, right? And, if you ingest a radioactive atom, you stand a good chance of getting some kind of autoimmune deficiency, right? And so, like,
and also, man-made radionuclides are different. They have a different aspect to them that can they're larger or they can be stuck in your body, and they really you're normally through evolution you expel the natural forms of radiation like from a banana, but our artificial ones, it's not clear that they go through you so easily. That's from Paul Zimmerman's work that I'm citing.
Paul's very, very smart. What is going on? And you live in Tokyo. All right.
Yeah.
What is going on there in terms of food, supermarkets, people being educated? Yeah. There was a time when the markets were talking about it. There was a time when people were seeing with Geiger counters. Yeah. Are those days over?
Yeah. And, that's right, Jeff. We covered that on your show, that time that, and this is a couple years ago, that the big supermarket chain, I think it was called Aeon, AEON perhaps, they were going to have 0% radiation in their food as their standard, and the government forbid that. Remember that? And they forbid that, so no free market, because people wanted that, but that would discriminate against, sellers that would have a little bit of radiation in their food. So that after that decision, and then you had a flood of bad rumors, stamping out bad rumors about radiation. It's just a rumor. And so anything with under 100 microsieverts, or 100 becquerels, per kilogram, would be legal. But even so, you can't say anything bad about it because it's under the limit. So,
well, and they've raised the limit though. They keep raising the limit. They just raised them again, didn't they? Not too long ago.
Well, not in Japan that I know of. Perhaps not that I've heard, but in the U.S., I mean, there's sort of like no limit, right? It's 1,500 becquerels per kilogram. But the thing is, if you're getting it every day, even if it's minute amounts, and I did check the water because last time you and I talked, Jeff, I went to the National Nuclear Regulatory website, which has taken over things in Japan, and they have all sorts of data, but it's all really low level. But they did have, so I mean, whether we can trust it or not, and I wrote a little commentary on that, because I've witnessed firsthand that the fraudulent data being taken in a certain location. So I documented that, but I can't say for everything that they publish. But anyway, the point is, in Tokyo, it's kind of interesting, even this, very conservative, and they don't tell their methodology, so I'm interested in Dana's opinion about this, but they don't say what kind of Geiger counters they use or how they measure it very specifically at all. But Tokyo water supply does have cesium-137 at kind of a relatively high level. In all the other prefectures, it says ND, non-detectable, but so...
That's a lie.
That's just, right. Even non-detectable is, even according to their own charts, there is radiation, but they say, well, it's so low that we just call it ND.
That's right. It's a lie.
Yeah.
It's there.
Yeah.
Sure. And it's all bioaccumulatable. Yeah, remember that.
Very skeptical about everything that.
Well, that's what's happened that Dana has seen. Keep in mind the bioaccumulation over the years in the links in the food chain have killed it, broken it up. It's a tragedy beyond comprehension, and no one in the mainstream media will talk about it. Yeah, right. Unbelievable. All right, Dana, go ahead.
When they say 100 becquerels per kilogram, or even in America, 1,500 becquerels a kilogram, becquerel is to me, the way I look at it, is a death sentence, because when you got one of these becquerels in you, they're identifying, say, cesium, but there's 100 times more strontium-90 that came with that. And if it was an iodine, then it was 10 times more iodine-131, 30 times more iodine-132, 31 times more iodine-129. And so, you need 2,000 Geiger counters to calibrate 2,000 isotopes in order to, and 2,000 people that are trained to use each of those Geiger counters to figure out what came true, and you need to have it done when it happened. And you still need to do it, right? How could you, organize and pay for all that? And a lot of these Geiger, so-called, I'm just using the word broadly as a Geiger counter, it could be $1 million a pop for some of these,
obscure nuclei.
Right, and Yoshi Sumatra was saying that the tritium from the reactors, that because they can't filter it out, that's why there's no snow in the mountains. And I agree with him wholeheartedly, because the snow couldn't crystallize. And I think that was a brilliant observation on his part. And then when you think about how many actual isotopes that are out there, man-made, there's tens of thousands that we don't know about because they're hid away and classified and under security blankets, and so we don't even know but we know they exist. They emit to over 10,000 of them, but we only hear about cesium-137, iodine-131. And so it's once they're emblematic of all the other isotopes. If you heard of one of them showed up, then you assumed that everything else had to show up. And so when they say 100 becquerels that they're checking for cesium, there's 30,000 becquerels extra there probably.
Really? See, now how is it? How do you do the multiplier again for that?
Well, when it's iodine-131, which is what they look for and what they can find, then you know everything.
But that's got a very short half-life. Why would they look for something with a short half-life? Why wouldn't they look for something with a longer half-life?
Well, because it sounds good with an 8-day half-life. And it's easy. They can find that, apparently. They're able to, because it is a fissionable product. But we know there's 10 times more produced in 132, and for every single iodine-131, and that there was 30 times more 132 for every single iodine. So if you ingested a single one of them, odds were you ingested 30 of these and 30 of those, and 29 of them and 50 of these, and 100 strontium of these.
Got it.
It's brutal. Right?
How has
plutonium?
Yeah, how has the Canadian... And plutonium is in the water.
Up to 200,000 times hotter. It burns up to 200,000 times hotter. That's why
the MOX fuel.
Right. And that's why it was consumed so fast and atomized in aerosol at such... and then, of course, that atomized in aerosol and ionized and radiated the steel and cement and the structure of the building and the rocks and everything else, because once, rocks will melt and atomize at 2,000 degrees. And so these things were popping off, especially that one was hitting 9,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures. And so this was eating and consuming and ionizing and radiating everything. And that a pound of it can kill everything on the planet in increments over a period
Richard, be careful. Don't breathe into the phone. It's really picking it up for some reason when you exhale.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
It's the fan. It's hot here.
Oh, is it? That's the sand?
It's a hot summer. Maybe.
It sounds like you're just gently exhaling. Okay. Now, the Canadian government, have they raised the safe limits of exposure like the U.S. government has? The same kind of thing?
7 million becquerels of tritium per cubic meter of water.
Come on.
And they put in cesium and strontium as a normal natural radioactive element now, even though they call it artificial radionuclides. The artificial radionuclides in our drinking water are 0.05 and 0.5 becquerels of uranium and potassium, stuff like this, which is, I don't know what he included that because it's irrelevant. Like you say, it's homeostasis. The potassium and that kind of uranium is homeostasis. Your body regulates it.
Right.
But the man-made stuff is sequestered into your organs and into your muscles and into your bones.
Good luck. You watch 5 to 10 years from now how many cancers are going to be all over the place. Children, adults,
Dr. Raymond Gilnedy, I didn't mean to cut you off, Chuck. Dr. Raymond Gilnedy from Loveless Respiratory Research Institute. Mm-hmm. He spent 35 years taking beagle dogs and beagle puppies, I kid you not, and getting them to inhale plutonium and americium. And what his studies showed, and I got 84 of his studies, and I've done videos about that with those studies, is that even the smallest particle would kill 70% of the animals within about 4 years.
Wow.
And so when you multiply that into human years, but when you look at the toxicity of the elements that were coming out of Fukushima, much different than Chernobyl. Chernobyl was only a 30% meltdown. Chernobyl was 1/3 the size of any of the reactors. In Japan, Chernobyl stopped after 10 days. Chernobyl, 1 million qualified, it was conscripted, but still they had all the equipment and they had the guts to go do the job, and they weren't drunk and they were able to read and write. They weren't like the homeless and the destitute and the victims in Fukushima. And Chernobyl stopped was equal to 400 Hiroshima bombs. Fukushima, like I say, folks, Fukushima didn't stop. So that's the significance of it.
It
Fukushima
has not
still
stopped.
consuming everything.
It's not going to stop.
It lost all of its inventories. They all, if I put a pot on the stove and boil the water at 120 degrees or 150 degrees, what happens if I put that same pot on a stove at 9,000 degrees? Well, the water doesn't matter because the pot ain't there anymore. It atomized in aerosols, right? And so that was the event that took out the whole coastline and took out the animal species, the marine species, the bird species.
Oh, sad.
The whole coast of Pacific Rim nations was that initial event, and then the ongoing doesn't give it a chance to even try to recover, like the studies showed after testing, the bomb testing back in the 60s. The production of the marine life in those areas went down 50% and stayed permanently because they never stopped releasing the nuclides into the ocean and dumping it into the ocean and everything else.